Hey guys, welcome to the ZedKraze show for tonight, episode 17, which is broadcasting live on the 15th of December 2017. But of course, you may be watching it in the archives of Twitch straight after this stream has finished, or maybe a couple of days later on YouTube. So it's probably not the 15th for you, but it sure is for me, right in this present time. Anyway, we are going to be wrapping up the week in gaming news as we always do, and we're going to be starting off with PlayStation Experience. Of course, PlayStation Experience was happening just after we did the last episode of ZedKraze show. So, yeah, you know, some of this news is almost a week old now, I guess, but it's still good news to hear. That said, I must admit, PlayStation Experience, at least the conference side of it, was a bit of a letdown. We have come to, be accustomed to PlayStation Experience being one of the biggest days of the year, basically, for announcements of big titles, in particular, obviously, for PlayStation, not necessarily going to be for any other platforms, is it? So, yeah, sometimes some of those announcements have rivaled, the Game Awards or E3 and other sort of convention shows and that. But this year, it seems that Sony have kind of blown all their announcements at all these other big events instead. So Sony kind of presented a more casual, fan-orientated convention, and the conference that they did was very much just a casual conversation. Yet another conversation with Kojima, with basically no new information coming out about Death Stranding, though he has since done an interview with someone else, and we have got a little bit more information about Death Stranding now, but it's still quite vague. Of course, the night before, there was a new trailer debuted at the Game Awards of Death Stranding, which was just another amazing, obscure, abstract sort of trailer, and I really just can't wait for that game to come out, whenever that may be. I must admit, I was reading up on Death Stranding, and Kojima had been quoted that basically through a few of obscure clues that the game is supposed to come out in 2018. It was supposed to come out before the Tokyo Olympics, which is 2020, and before the year of Akira, which is 2019, which would mean it would have to come out in 2018 if you actually stuck to those guns. I find it a bit hard to believe that we're going to get it in 2018. I think it's more of a 2019 title. But maybe with this newfound independence, maybe Kojima can actually knock this out quite quickly. And release it maybe late 2018, like maybe December 2018, like a year from now. I'm happy for that to happen, because I definitely want to be playing that as soon as possible. But of course, we haven't even seen any gameplay yet. We've only seen those sort of, not pre-rendered trailers. They're supposedly running at 4K on PlayStation 4 in-engine. But yeah, we haven't actually seen how the gameplay is going to work yet, which is supposed to be sort of online features and an open world. And we're really starting to get a feel that it seems to be about parallel universes, dimensions sort of thing, where you kind of go from one to another, and it's about life and death. Yeah, supposedly death isn't what it normally is in other games. So I'm guessing you get reincarnated, or you die, but you continue on as like a dead person or something like that. Who knows? But it looks awesome, and I can't wait to see more of that. Hopefully we'll get a gameplay trailer, maybe say E3 next year, with an announcement of a release date for the end of the year, perhaps, if we're lucky. But yeah, as I said, yeah, not much news on Death Stranding at PlayStation Experience. However, we did have some news mentioned, quite casually actually, in a way. Last Guardian, my favorite game of 2016, has got now a VR experience. It was released earlier this week. And basically, I haven't actually tried it out yet. I've downloaded it. I can't wait to try it out, because as I said, it's my favorite game last year. And the idea of being able to have a VR experience of that, being able to hang out with Trico and just, I don't know what you do. I think you just kind of play with him or something, maybe throw rocks to him or something like that, or feed him and things like that. I don't know, but that's awesome, and it's free. So whether you are already an existing fan, or you're just a VR headset owner that wants to, a PlayStation VR headset owner, of course, that wants to have a free VR experience that is very cool, definitely check that out. It may even help convince you to try out that game, which is, Yes, flawed. It has bad camera control and arguably not very good controls, though there is an argument also that that's on purpose to make you feel like a clumsy kid. But if you can get past that, it is a brilliant, brilliant game. And as I said, my game of the year, which was, closely fought against Inside and Firewatch for me. So, yeah. Anyway, another VR experience that is coming is Wipeout. Yes, I said Wipeout. I think people would have almost joked about the concept of Wipeout having a VR mode, basically saying you'd have to have like a bucket strapped around your neck, just ready for the spew to be constantly coming out of your mouth while you play Wipeout in VR. Well, it's become a reality somehow. And the good thing is it's free for owners of the Amiga collection. So you may know Amiga collection came out, I think, earlier this year on PlayStation 4 as a remastered version of 3 previous Wipeout games, and I've been quite tempted by it before. Anyway, this Wipeout VR mode that's coming for free to Amiga collection, you can't just get it free, unlike the Last Guardian one. You do have to own the Amiga collection game. It's coming out in early 2018. I think that may actually convince me to finally, bite the bullet and get Wipeout, which it's currently on special, I believe, on the PlayStation Store right now. So it could be a good time to pick up a copy of that, perhaps. Now, game that we thought maybe might not be coming or not. There had been some concern whether or not it was going to be coming out or not, but Sony did reaffirm a commitment to it recently, and that's Dreams. We hadn't actually seen much about it for a while. But Sony reassured that there would be some news about Dreams at PlayStation Experience, and they were right. They had a panel, I believe, that was not broadcast, or might have been broadcast, actually. Yeah, no, what I'm talking about, I actually watched some of it, because they did a live demo of Dreams, but they also, talked about it at the main opening ceremony conference as well. So there's a beta coming, but there's no release date yet, other than, I believe, 2018 is the release date for that. It is looking pretty crazy. Basically, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, Little Big Planet, which is by Media Molecule as well, but kind of on some sort of drugs and steroids or something like that. It's like this crazy, I guess, sandbox where you can create kind of whatever you want and make them into different games or films and that, and you can even do voice acting in it, I believe. There's supposedly going to be a companion app, which I think you can record your own high quality voice over lines, and then I'm guessing you upload it to the cloud and download it into the game or something like that. So yeah, it could come out. I mean, it almost seems like Super Mario Maker, but to the next level. And I guess Little Big Planet, you could make your own levels, but this seems like a lot different in that it doesn't seem so much like you're just making Little Big Planet levels. In this, it feels like looks like you might actually be making your own games to an extent. I mean, there probably is some limitations on how original creation you can make, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the community does with the game, and I think I'm sold on it. I think I will pick it up. Looks like another great PlayStation exclusive. Now, another I think it's a PlayStation exclusive, Medieval, which is an old game from, I think, PS1 era, PS2 era maybe. It's been remastered in 4K, which is a bit of a curveball. It's coming to PS4. I didn't seem to mention a release date, I don't think, so yeah, keep an eye out for that if you are a fan of Medieval. Detroit, which had quite an interesting live demo at the conference, where they got the audience to shout out to the guy playing the game on stage as to what decisions to make, and it actually, I reckon it worked. I reckon it was quite successful. There's been some bad press about this game in respect to some of the media have tried out a demo where there's a domestic violence scene and they feel like it hasn't been handled that well. I can't really comment on that because obviously I haven't played it. I'm happy to, though. Feel free to send me a copy. Yeah, I feel like this live demo helped convince me a bit more that I want to give it a go. I mean, I liked Heavy Rain, David Cage's, I guess, first game of this sort of style. Well, not first game, because he's had games prior to that, but I guess in his sort of PlayStation exclusive era, because I believe all the games before Heavy Rain were not PlayStation exclusives. and I really liked it. The only thing I didn't like about it was one, I stupidly was looking on a Wikipedia page and found a spoiler that gave away who the murderer was in the game. So that kind of ruined the experience for me playing it to the end. But that's my own fault for being stupid, basically. But yeah, also the main problem I had, which is not my fault, is the controls. Now the control system, yeah, instead of like having all hand actions maybe assigned to like square and all feet actions or whatever assigned to X and things like that. The controls are always constantly evolving in a series of quick time events. Now it's one thing to have quick time events, so be it. If it feels good, like I mean, let's just do that, whatever. But obviously it's a very cinematic game. It's like an interactive film almost. But the thing is, you do walk around in this world, and the idea that you constantly change controls, I just think totally ruined the experience of Heavy Rain for me. And I was somewhat interested in Beyond Two Souls, but when I played the demo, it was the same sort of control setup where you're constantly trying to guess what button you were supposed to be pressing for a certain action. Now, I get that's supposed to create some sort of tension to an extent, but I don't think it works in respect of being respectful to the player and saying, hey, when you are in the heat of a moment or something like that, if you want to do something with, say, your hands, then you press square. If you want to do something with your feet, like kick someone or something like that, you press X. And, of course, those actions could slightly change in the respect of what X might do with your legs as such. It might jump in certain circumstances, but kick someone in another circumstance, depending on what you're doing. But at least have some logic to it, and that's the problem. There's no logic to it, and Detroit seems to continue that theme. They still stuck in these stupid controls, but the thing is, I like futuristic games. I like the idea of this concept of, or it's not like an original concept or anything, but I like stories about and visions of the future where we're talking about the rights of AI and robots and such like that. So, I don't know, once again, kind of like Dreams, I'm starting to come around on it, and I think I may eventually get it. Whether or not they'll be on launch day or not, I'm not sure, but we'll have to see. But the news is that it's supposedly coming out in Northern Spring 2018, so it could be only like 3 to 6 months away at this point, so not long to go till Detroit become human. And finally, well, not finally for the ZedKraze show, but finally from the conference, or PlayStation Experience, the CEO of PlayStation North America has hinted that there may be the ability to finally change your username for the PlayStation Network sometime in the future. Like as if possibly that might even happen in 2018. That's a good thing, I think. I've been wanting to change. I mean, I haven't really been, wanting to smash the door down at Sony and say, let me change my username, but I wouldn't mind doing it. I definitely wouldn't mind doing it at some point. Yeah, hopefully that feature is coming soon. It's kind of, I think it's been available on other platforms, so it's kind of annoying that it hasn't been on PlayStation. Yeah, and I think Xbox does it, so Xbox seems to be growing more and more flexibility options that are making it look like a much more flexible platform. Cross-platform, ability to play on PC. I believe you can change your username on it. So PlayStation's been quite stubborn on some of these things, like cross-platform and stuff like that. So the ability to change your username, even though it may very well be a logistical nightmare for them, I don't know. Yeah, is a good move if they can make it happen. Now, continuing sort of Sony, I guess, orientated news, Shadow of the Colossus. One of Team Ico games, as I mentioned, like with Last Guardian, are some of my favorite games of all time. Shadow of the Colossus was a great game, but I never got past about the second or third Colossi. And I have wanted to complete it at some point. I have replayed Ico, but I never got around to retrying Shadow of Colossus when it was remastered on PlayStation 3, even though I have it. So maybe PlayStation 4, the remake of it, not just a shiny coat of paint, but an actual complete remake, will be the time that I finally try and complete that game. Anyway, the good news for collectors like myself, but maybe not good for my wallet, is that there's a collector's edition that has been revealed, and it's going to include a steel book collector's case with an outer sleeve, artist postcards, a printed manual, a physical world map, Colossi stickers, 2 custom PS4 themes, a Colossi avatar set for PlayStation 4, plus digital extras such as an ancient bow, cloak of fate, and the spotted steed aggro skin. So that's quite a bit. So as long as it's a good price, then yeah, I may be interested. The collector's edition looks very similar to the original PS2 collector's editions, which I do have, and I probably should have pre-prepared to show on screen. But hey, if you're a fan of Team Ico, you know what those look like. They came with all the postcards and had a nice cardboard box and that sort of thing. So this kind of seems to be replicating that to an extent. So yeah, depending on the price, I may pick that up, but we'll have to see. It's also been announced that the PS4 Pro will play the game at 30 frames per second in 4K. And that sounds like it's full proper 4K, not like some upscaled sort of 1800p sort of mode with little sort of tricks going on. But it also do 60 frames per second at a lower resolution. So it'll be interesting to see what would be the preferred mode to play it in there. I'd possibly say maybe even 60 frames per second at a low resolution. But yeah, it's obviously a remake, but how much better it's going to look keep in mind, this is originally a PS2 game. How much better it's going to look like to warrant 4K, I don't know. But that said, from the reports I've heard, it supposedly looks amazing, so maybe it will be worth playing in 4K, even if you're going at 30 frames per second. Continuing the Sony theme, PS Vita has had a couple of release announcements, which a lot of people always keep thinking that the PS Vita is dead, but it just keeps trooping on, even though, you know, obviously the Nintendo Switch has all the attention these days. Papers, Please is now out on Vita, which is a great game, so if you haven't played that yet, and yeah, it'd be a great game on the Vita, I reckon. Like, I really want it on my mobile phone, but it's only out on iPad, not on the phone as such. Read Only Memories 2064, which I still haven't played, but I'm really intending to at some point, is now on PS Vita, which is quite interesting, because they announced only a few months ago that they didn't think it was going to, or not they didn't think, they said it's not going to be possible to put it on PS Vita, even though they'd been trying for so long. It was something to do with memory or some crap. So maybe Sony stepped in and say, hey, let us help you out a bit, because now it's out. And the good thing is also it's a cross-buy, so if you already have it on PS4, you already have it now free on a PS Vita if you have a Vita as well. And the last bit of news for the PS Vita is that Stardew Valley is coming to Vita still. So supposedly it had been announced. I didn't actually even know that. But it's supposed to be still coming sometime in 2018. But the downside to it is that it won't feature multiplayer, which if you don't know, multiplayer is a feature that we've been waiting for quite a while for Stardew Valley. I believe it's been done by a developer at Chucklefish, the publisher of Stardew Valley. It's not been done by the original developer, Concerned Ape. But yes, supposedly that's going to be coming out, I think, in early 2018. It's coming to PC first, I believe, and then the first console to receive it will be the Switch, which is great because those are the two places I'm going to have Stardew Valley. I already have it on PC, and I'm just trying to hold off on picking it up on Switch at this point, but I will be probably pulling the trigger sometime soon. I just pulled the trigger on what's it called? Rocket League this afternoon. It's on special currently. I thought, oh, there's so many Switch games I want to get right now. I'm trying to hold off and wait for specials and stuff like that. But yeah, I was like, okay, this will buy me some time. Even though the thing is, my Switch is basically a Zelda Breath of the Wild machine right now. I don't want to play anything else, but I also kind of do want to play lots of things. So Stardew Valley coming to Vita, but unfortunately no multiplayer for you. Lord of the Rings news. Fantasy Flight will be making a digital version of the Lord of the Rings living card game. And from the pictures I've seen of it, it almost looks like an absolute complete Hearthstone clone visually, but obviously with a Lord of the Rings theme. Now that could be a real good selling point to some people. Some people might be getting over Hearthstone after it's been running for a few years, and especially how if you're not keeping up with possibly buying all the cards and expansions and that sort of all that sort of stuff. I've been hearing more and more that it's very hard to play it these days if you haven't been keeping up with it, and that can be a problem with these sort of games that keep expanding constantly and expect you to keep paying it and keep playing it. So perhaps this might be something fresh and new for Hearthstone players, and of course Lord of the Rings fans as well, and of course fans of the original physical card game. And I think that's probably the benefit here is that unlike Hearthstone, if you like the digital version, you might want to go out and get the card version. And if you like the original physical version, you might be happy to finally be able to play it digitally as well. But I don't believe any release date has been announced for that yet, so I guess that's some early news on that. Now, speaking of release dates, Mechwarrior 5, which I believe was announced a while ago, but I haven't really been keeping track of it, I must admit. A friend of mine was a massive Mechwarrior fan, but yeah, I've never really massively gotten into it. I guess probably because in its heyday, it was more of a PC title, and I never really had a PC title back in those days in the 90s that could handle something like that. But anyway, it's been announced that it'll be released in late 2018. But the interesting part is that it will also have full mod support, which will be supposedly integrated with Steam Workshop, I think it is. And it will also have up to 4-player co-op. So, I don't know, that's sounding kind of interesting. Maybe this will be my Mechwarrior game. Maybe this will rope me in. So yeah, keep an eye out for that in late 2018. I can't remember well, I don't think I've actually seen what platforms it's coming out for, but I'm guessing it's a PC, Mac, Linux sort of release at first. But who knows? A lot of PC releases are now these days getting console ports later on as well. Adventure Time news. There's a new Adventure Time game, which is coming, which is nothing new. Like, there's been quite a lot of Adventure Time games come out, but this sounds like almost like the one that everyone probably would want. It's called Adventure Time Pirates of the, and I'm going to stuff this up, but I'm sure fans will know how to pronounce this, Enchiridion, or something like that. Anyway, is the good news is it's an open world game. And it's coming to PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC in Northern Spring 2018. I say Northern Spring because I've been trying to figure out a way as an Australian how I mention these release dates when they're often mentioned with Northern Hemisphere seasons, but that doesn't necessarily, if I just say spring, it could mean spring Australian, which is actually autumn or fall, should I say, Northern Hemisphere. So I'm saying Northern before the season when it's in like an American season date or something like that. Anyway, so that means that's only like I think about 3 or 4 months away again. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. I mean, I don't mind Adventure Time. I'm not hugely into it. If I was a kid, I reckon I would have got into it massively. But yeah, this game looks pretty good from the screenshots I've seen. So this might be my first Adventure Time game because it's looking pretty cool. And an open world game like that would be very cool, I reckon. I'd be happy to get a new Simpsons game like that. Much like, what was the game called? It was like a GTA sort of style Simpsons game. Hit and Run, was it? I think it was. Anyway. But yeah, there's some ideas for Disney, who have just acquired, by the way, which is not on my sort of note sheet here. Disney have actually just acquired a significant portion of Fox's assets, 20th Century Fox or 21st Century. I keep reading different things, but whatever. They now own things like Simpsons, and yeah, a whole bunch of different IP. They didn't buy up Fox News and all the sort of more, I guess, serious broadcasting stuff, but they got all the, I guess, content, if you will, you know, the fictional content, you know, so that's quite huge news. So who knows what direction a lot of that IP is going to go now. Speaking of IP that has been going for a very long time, we're talking Street Fighter, possibly one of the first, if not the first arcade games I ever saw as a kid. I remember seeing Street Fighter 2 arcade machine down at my local shopping centre, and I was just blown away by it. There was this one guy playing E-Honda, and there was a bunch of people gathered around him, and he was just smashing that button to just do that karate chop thing he was doing and that. And yeah, I think ever since then, I've just had an alignment with the Street Fighter series. Even though I don't really have many. I've got Street Fighter 4, but I still haven't gotten Street Fighter 5. But I would like to sometime. Anyway, news is that the 30th anniversary collection is coming to Switch, PC, PS4, and Xbox One in May 2018. So there's quite a few good releases coming up in the first half of 2018 already. This will feature the original Street Fighter, Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter Alpha, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 3 Second Impact, and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Yes, it's like I think about 10 different Street Fighters, but really probably only in the core of it's probably only 3 different games, you know. But of course, whole bunch of different rosters in that sort of thing. So yeah, and some of those games will also, I think more so the more recent ones will also have online play, which is really cool. So yeah, I must admit I'm pretty tempted for that. On one hand, I feel like I'd want to get it for PC, but the other hand, I would like to get it for Switch. That would be cool to have those classic Street Fighters on the go. But I also feel like you just smash. I just am a bit wary of the Switch controllers, like how much punishment they're going to be able to take. So playing an arcade style game like that on Switch controllers, like the Joy-Cons, I don't know, maybe it might be a bit too brutal for it. But still, yeah, I'm definitely tempted by that. Meanwhile, Street Fighter 5, which I mentioned before I wouldn't mind getting, and the arcade edition is coming out, I think, in January, which may be finally the temptation that gets me to buy it. The Season 3 characters for the Season Pass have been announced, and they include Sakura, Cody, Sagat, Blanca, and some new characters. One called G, which looks like a sort of Abraham Lincoln sort of character, and Falky, a new female fighter. Next up, iOS news, as in new releases and soon-to-be releases. One bit of news is that you can now supposedly pre-order new upcoming titles on the App Store, which is kind of bizarre. You know, most pre-orders on other platforms like Steam and that usually include like a discount, like 10% off, 20% off or something like that, to give you an incentive to pre-order a bit earlier, or like some sort of DLC or something like that. I don't get the feeling that's going to be the case with App Store pre-orders. I haven't actually noticed it on App Store myself. It may be only available in some regions, like perhaps the US at this point, but it's an interesting concept. But I don't see me pre-ordering it unless it's going to get me earlier access to the title, or, yeah, as I said, some extra DLC or a discount would be probably the best thing for me, I would say. Anyway, some new games for iOS. Thumper, which I first played a demo of on PlayStation VR, and now it's come to multiple platforms. I feel like it would be best experience that game in VR. It was quite a interesting game in VR, actually. Well, that's come to iOS. It's coming to iOS on 24th January. Inside, as I said, probably my second favorite game of last year, is now out on iOS, which I had been wondering if it would, because Limbo came out and that controlled so unbelievably well. It's one of the few games I've actually replayed, because I played it through on PC, of course, or was it PlayStation 4? I can't remember. But yeah, I've almost completely completed it on iPhone as well. The controls are so good, it's quite amazing for a platformer like that. So I'm hoping the controls are just as good as Inside. The interesting thing is you can download it for free and kind of play, I guess, the start of it, but you need to pay an in-app purchase to unlock the full game. I think that's great. I think that's a great way of kind of providing a demo in some way. The only thing I don't like about this thing, because it's something I've considered as someone that's trying to get into game development myself, is I feel like as soon as I see an in-app purchase, unless I was really knowledgeable about that, I'd be skeptical. Oh, you're trying to sell me a bunch of gems, and am I got to wait on timers to happen and all that sort of stuff? The classic free-to-play sort of stuff. But I feel this is actually the more ethical way to go. It's kind of like how Nintendo did it. They call it free-to-start, where you get to play a little bit of it, and then if you enjoy it, then you'll wanna unlock the rest of the game by way, so that people don't not want to buy it and pay out a premium price for a mobile game because they think, oh, what happens if I don't like it? But also they won't feel like they have to get a refund or anything if they play the start of it and then it's like, oh, actually I don't enjoy this. But I'm telling you, Inside is amazing. That said, Limbo works well on mobile enough. Like the atmosphere still seems to work well, especially if you play it at night. Inside, I just think it's such a cinematic game. I don't know how much I want to play it on mobile or not. But because I have already completed it on PC, I guess it will be okay for me to do a playthrough at some point on mobile. But I do probably recommend, if you can, your first experience on Inside should be on a big screen, on console or PC. But hey, if mobile is the only way to do it, go for it, sort of thing. But it's such an atmospheric game. You should be playing at night on a big screen, speakers up loud, and just get immersed in that game. It's such an amazing game. Another quite amazing game, which I haven't completed either, so maybe, and this is more likely to suit well if the controls are decent enough on mobile, and more likely, well, actually not necessarily more likely for me to complete it, because it's a real puzzler. I'm talking about Fez. Who would have thought Fez is now out on iOS? And it looks pretty good from the screenshots. I mean, it's a 2D pixel platformer, so, you know, it's, I guess it was going to look good on iOS. But probably the more surprising thing is the fact that it even exists on mobile, because, of course, if you don't know, Phil Fish, one of the original developers of Fez, kind of exited the games industry in quite a huff and a puff. He kind of had enough of the industry after Fez, and he cancelled Fez 2 and that. But I believe someone still at the company, I think they're called, what, Polytronic or something like that, is still kind of, they put out a patch after years, a new patch for a Fez. I think, when was that? About a year ago or something like that. And now, obviously, it made a Fez port for iOS. So yeah, I'm definitely quite tempted for that. So I might try that out later on. Give it a second go, because I got as far as I could before I got stuck in that game. So yeah, it's quite a mind bender, that game. Moving on, Ni no Kuni 2, which is a game I should be into. I got the original. It's one of the most expensive games I've ever bought, in the respect that I bought the collector's edition, because I was a massive Studio Ghibli fan. So I got to get this game. It's Studio Ghibli the game, but produced by Level 5 with assistance of Studio Ghibli. But I just couldn't get into it. There was multiple problems I had with it. One, it was a JRPG and the turn-based fighting, which I'm not into. Yeah, also I found it quite distracting. It had like 3 different sort of art styles going on in the game, like a 2D flat animation style with Studio Ghibli, and then these 2 different 3D modes. I felt like it really distracted from playing the game. Anyway, Ni no Kuni 2 is actually looking really great, but I don't think I'll pick it up. But if you were looking to pick it up, it has been delayed to March 2018. Well, it was already in 2018. I think it was coming out in early, or sort of mid-January. It's now coming out March 23rd in 2018. Speaking of magical games, Harry Potter has a new game, and I'm not talking, let's not confuse this with the AR game that was announced by Pokemon Go makers Niantic. That game's called Harry Potter Wizards Unite, and that is also coming out in 2018, supposedly. It's an AR Harry Potter game, much like Pokemon Go, probably exactly like Pokemon Go, but just reskinned. If it's anything like how Ingress was basically Pokemon Go was a reskinned version of Ingress. Anyway, you may have known when they announced that, Warner Brothers had announced they got a publishing label now for just Harry Potter games, which suggested that Wizards Unite game was not the only one Harry Potter game coming. Well, the news is that yes, there is another one coming, and it's called Harry Potter's Hogwarts Mystery, and it's a narrative role-playing game, and it'll be coming out for mobile devices as well. So it's interesting that both of these games are mobile games, and that this won't be a console game or PC game. Which is a shame in many ways, because it sounds like it should be on PC or console. You'll be able to create your own student, which is supposedly a first for the Harry Potter series, instead of just playing one of the main characters, from the Harry Potter series. And you'll attend Hogwarts and do lessons and all this stuff. So, you know, and it's supposed to be like a mystery, I think, like adventure sort of scenario. So it sounds like a pretty cool game for Harry Potter fans. But yeah, I don't know how much people are going to buy into something like that on mobile, but maybe they're thinking they'll get a bigger audience by going mobile with it, and perhaps they'll eventually port it to PC and that later on. Who knows? We'll have to see. But no release date on that, other than I believe it's coming out in 2018, but don't quote me on that. Actually, I don't even know if there has been a release date for it. Didn't have it written down, so don't quote me on it, as I said. GTA, which pretty much has a bit of news almost every second week, I'd say, has a new content patch called the Doomsday Heist. And it looks like to be the biggest content patch they've ever basically released on GTA Online, I reckon. It introduces a whole new lot of gameplay missions, which I must admit myself, I know there's been multiple of these sort of content patches that include like heists and stuff that actually give you almost like a single player content sort of experience, but I've never really gotten into it for some reason. But the bigger thing, I think, in many ways, is some of the new vehicles that's been introduced with this patch. There's a flying DeLorean called the Deluxo. There's a submersible Lotus, which is like a kind of like a James Bond car. And there's also something that people have been wanting for a long time, I believe. I think because the last time it's been featured was maybe San Andreas, is a jetpack. Now, I don't know how much these cost yet. This is already out, but I haven't actually logged in yet to check out how much all this costs. But I'm guessing if like the Batmobile that they released called the Vigilante about a month or so ago is any guess, that was about almost 3 million GTA dollars. So I'm guessing these cars and the jetpack are also going to be around a similar price, because I'm sure most people would want those. I definitely, well, actually, I'd like all three of those. But the DeLorean in particular, I'm a massive Back to the Future fan. And also just the ability to be able to drive around in GTA and then just suddenly start flying. I think that's going to really just make the gameplay in GTA Online just get absolutely nuts. But maybe in some ways, Rockstar seeing this as kind of getting to the tail end of GTA Online to an extent. Like, they will obviously keep it going because it keeps making them money and that sort of thing, but maybe they'll slow down the content that they're adding in after this massive patch, because they do have Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out in, I think it's March in 2018. So that's only a few months off now, and it's supposed to be a massive online mode in that. And I wonder if the focus will now shift to that instead. So perhaps this is almost their kind of content goodbye, perhaps. But there's nothing that's actually been said by Rockstar to suggest that as such. But I just reckon this might be one of the last big ridiculous ones, because, I reckon it will surely get completely messy now that you've got like the Vigilante, which I think can shoot missiles. You've got a flying DeLorean. You've got a Lotus that can go underwater, and you've got a jetpack where you can just fly wherever you want as well. I think those things are just going to make the game so ridiculous. I mean, it's going to be fun, but it may also make it a bit harder to actually, want to take the game serious as far as trying to play it. But who knows? I'm happy to be convinced otherwise. And in the new year, I think we'll do a GTA stream and check that out and see what it's actually like. Now, a game that we did stream early in the year, which I was really impressed by, and we actually completed on stream, and we even had the community manager from IO Interactive jump in and suggest that my naming of their bouncers, their enforcers in the game, I called them sus dudes, should be the official title for them going forward. Anyway, the first episode of Hitman is now available for free. That's Paris. Now, what convinced me to actually buy the game was they released, when IO Interactive went independent from Square Enix, and they managed to keep the IP for Hitman, they decided to release a prologue for Hitman out for free, and that was enough. That tiny little training mission, basically, was enough to convince me, hey, this is a great game. I can't believe I've held off on buying it for so long. So I picked it up in the Steam sales at the time, and yeah, and that definitely convinced me. So I feel like if the prologue doesn't convince you, surely Paris will. Or at least, hey, just download and play Paris. I mean, there's plenty to do in that game. There's so many different ways to approach each level that you could probably get many hours out of just playing the free Paris level and the prologue level without even playing the rest of the game. But I would suggest purchasing the whole game, even if you wait for a sale. I know now I'm quite a Hitman fan based off this, not necessarily for the previous games. I'm not going to go back to the previous games, but I definitely will be picking up that season pass as soon as Hitman Season 2 comes out. Now, next up is some Nintendo Switch news, which is, if you know me now, ever since I got my Switch only about a month or so ago, I'm a massive Nintendo Switch fan. I'm totally convinced now. Anyway, the news is that Nintendo Switch has now sold over 10 million units in less than a year. I mean, I say less than a year. I mean like 9 months. This came out in March in 2017. So we're not even to a full year of the Switch, and it's already got 10 million units. Now, that might not sound impressive compared to Sony PlayStation's 70 million plus units sold, but keep in mind that obviously the PlayStation 4 has been out longer, but also to compare it against its own consoles. The Wii U, which obviously the Nintendo Switch has shortened the lifespan of the Wii U because it was a bit of a flop, and to do a comparison to show how much of a flop it was, the Wii U over its whole lifetime has only sold 13.5 million units. So I would say by the end of the first year cycle, which is pretty much a fiscal year by I think American corporations style, that will be probably equal to Wii U's like 3 or 4 years in the wild. So that's pretty impressive. Now, of course, we don't have figures on Xbox One where it's at, but the estimations I think are around a 30 to 40 million, about roughly half of what PlayStation is. So while Sony won't be concerned that the Switch is like catching up because it's still got to sell 7 times the amount to even catch up to where the PlayStation is now, surely I wonder if it makes previously and said they're not looking to make a hybrid console like the Switch, but perhaps maybe Xbox should be looking at it, because if Sony aren't interested in it, despite having the background of having the Vita and that and other portable consoles in the past, maybe this is the time that Microsoft should be looking at a hybrid console of some sort. It would make sense, something that could almost work like a Steam machine, portable Steam machine or something like that. I think, that could be the way to go for Microsoft going forward, because obviously, even with Xbox One X, I don't think they're going to catch up anytime soon. So perhaps that's what Microsoft could do. And I think they could pull it off, They make good controllers and that. And they make the Microsoft Surface, which is a portable device, just make a shrink. There was a rumor at one point of there being a Microsoft Surface Mini. So if you made a Microsoft Surface Mini and then grab, 2 ends of an Xbox controller and put them on the sides like the Switch, as long as you don't copy the patent or whatever that the Switch has, that could be the way to get Microsoft back in the game a bit, sort of thing. And they could do that cross-platform thing where if you buy it on your portable Microsoft Xbox, you can, play it on PC as well on Xbox One. Yeah, maybe that's where Xbox can play. But yeah, who knows if Sony will ever make a hybrid console. But I'm telling you, I'm convinced by the hybrid console model. I'm loving it. Now, I've had someone in a commentary say, have I seen The Last Jedi yet? And I will say no, I haven't. I've heard a lot of hype about it. I've seen some really impressive reviews of it. I'm kind of, I am a Star Wars fan, but I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I will be seeing it next week. But yeah, I can't say I'm overly excited because I actually thought Episode 7 was one of the worst Star Wars ever. It was basically a remake of, or respun version of the same sort of storyline as Episode 4. So, and I wasn't that much of a hater of the prequel trilogy. Everyone loves to hate on that prequel trilogy. But yeah, other than Episode 2, which I think was pretty trash, with a whole love story sort of thing, which was really cheesy, I think Episode 1, and in particular Episode 3, were really good. Episode 3 is probably one of my favourite episodes. But yeah, supposedly this is a lot better, Episode 8, so I will be checking it out next week, and hopefully impressing me. I want to be impressed, but I don't think I am going to be impressed by it. Now, speaking of Star games that are no doubt influenced by Star Wars, what a great segue. Thanks for that segue there. Star Citizen, a game we have talked about quite a lot on this stream. We have yet to actually stream it though, because I've been waiting for 3.0 alpha to come out all year, and it still hasn't come in. To put in perspective, the original release, the announcement of the alpha 3.0 patch was announced back in August 2016. So it's been a year and a half since they first announced it. Now, it was supposed to originally come out end of 2016. It didn't. Now it's the end of 2017. It still hasn't come out. So they're at least a year late, a year and a half since their original announcement, and who knows when it's actually going to come out. I'm going to guess they're going to try and force it out just before the end of the year, so it doesn't look completely, extremely amazingly embarrassing for them. But yeah, if they do, from the sounds of it, from the few people that have testing access to it at this point, it sounds like it's a buggy mess. So if they do push it out now, people will be wondering why they wait a year for a buggy mess. So yeah, anyway, the news is that that CIG, Cloud Imperium Games, the makers of Star Citizen, are being sued by Crytek for breaches of contract. Now, if you don't know, Star Citizen was originally being developed on the CryEngine. And about a year or so ago, they announced that they were going to be swapping over to Lumberyard by Amazon. Now, if you don't know what Lumberyard is, it's Amazon's game engine, but it basically is supposedly pretty much Crytek's Crysis engine, which they sold or licensed to Amazon. And they've just done their own tweaks, and I think included their own sort of online system, which is supposed to be the attractive part of, I guess, Lumberyard, is their online services they include. But yeah, so CLG are getting sued by Crytek. They reckon they've breached a contract, I think, and don't quote me on this. It was something along the lines of that, yeah, that there's still code that they're using from the Crysis engine. Is still running parts of it on the Crysis engine, because there has been video screenshots shown of them, of Cloud Imperium Games, showing on the many videos that they're always showing. So there's probably plenty of evidence out there showing code and stuff like that, and it's showing that it's from CryEngine and not Lumberyard. So that sounds quite incriminating. Now, it could be argued that perhaps it's Amazon's fault. Maybe they haven't actually changed those parts of Lumberyard yet. I don't know. I haven't actually checked out Lumberyard, and I'm not a coder as such, so I would have even noticed that sort of stuff yet. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting debate there in the courts as far as that goes. CIG have claimed no responsibility. They say they're not guilty in this respect. But that's not the only lawsuit coming for him. There's also a lawsuit from a consumer who's spent $25,000 US dollars, not $25 US dollars, 25,000. Get that into you, 25,000 US dollars. Yeah, that's a lot of money. That's like worth. Well, my car's worth nothing right now. It's quite old and that. But when I originally bought my second-hand car, it's worth like, yeah, 3-4 times what my car's worth. Anyway, this person spent all this money on it, and they're trying to get a refund because obviously Cloud Imperium Games have not been delivering on their promises. They're being way delayed, and there's no end in sight for Star Citizen at this point. There's no release date. There's no real perspective that they're actually ever going to release this game, and particularly with this lawsuit now from Crytek. If Crytek win, this could actually maybe even end Star Citizen if they get sued for a lot of dollars. I mean, if you look at what happened with ZeniMax and Oculus, where ZeniMax accused Oculus of taking code from them for Oculus Rift and that, and they got sued for millions and millions of dollars. I can't remember the exact amount, but it'd probably be almost the same amount as how much CIG have actually raised for this whole game. So if that, if some big sort of payout came out from that, that's going to be all these backers' money that put their money towards Cloud Imperium Games making this game for them, and instead it might go to a legal bill and then be told, hey, we're bankrupt now and we can't make a game. In many ways, it might almost be a cheap, an easy out for Cloud Imperium Games, who have dug such a deep hole for themselves that they're probably never going to get out of it, because they just keep offering ships and contents for money that who knows when they'll get around to making it, probably years ahead of time. They're releasing this sort of stuff for sale before it's even made or playable. So in many ways, this might even be a good exit strategy for Chris Roberts in some ways. If they get sued and made bankrupt because of this, Chris Roberts and Cloud Imperium Games can say, see, hey, we were trying to make this game, but it's Crytek's fault why we couldn't make this, when maybe they may have run out of money sometime in the near future anyway, just from lack of donations and that. Well, not donation, should I say, because it's not donation. It's a crowdfunding payment for, you could almost call it a pre-order for the game. that could be a way to kind of, do some PR on them. So this could be good or bad for CIG on many ways, depending on what their actual financial position is and whether they have indeed breached the contract. Because one of the other bits of the contract I believe was in there, but don't quote me on it once again, is that supposedly they were supposed to be committed to CryEngine, and yet they've swapped to a different engine. So they possibly, if that was in the original contract, they've possibly broken that clause as well. Yeah, as I don't know if I fully said this, but anyway, that consumer that spent $25,000, they're suing them because they're trying to get a refund, a full refund, because they haven't been delivering it. This person had been trying for months and months to get it, and they've supposedly gone back as much as $17,000, but haven't got the full amount yet. But yeah, long before, not long before they got all this money, but I think a bit before they got all of it, of what they've got so far. They had threatened they were going to take this to court, sort of thing, and now they have. And I think this is certainly not the first of these sort of cases, and I think there'll be a lot more, because people are more and more, you could buy it a bit in the first few years, like, oh yeah, some delays and that sort of thing, but now the fact that it's arguably in some ways 6 years into development, and yeah, no end in sight, and they're selling stuff like land plots and ships that will not be probably made or playable for years to come, sort of thing, for hundreds if not thousands of dollars. It's just ridiculous, really. And I saw an actual graph actually of showing all the ships that they've released for sale over time, and then it showed which ones have actually been made and which ones have not been made yet or playable yet. And there was actually ships from years ago that had been sold to people, and they still cannot actually use their ships that they paid for years ago. I mean, you're used to doing a pre-order maybe a year before, 6 months before, 3 months before. And of course, this was an early access and development thing, but they're literally selling things that still do not exist 5 to 6 years on. It's pretty ridiculous. So yeah, anyway, as usual, we could talk about Star Citizen for ages. Now, I guess some positive news, there was some hints that this was going to be happening anyway, but it almost feels like a PR stunt to an extent as well. That we'll finally be seeing some Squadron 42, the single player campaign content, next week. So hopefully next episode of the ZedKraze show, we can report back on what we've seen from that. Now, this will be interesting because we haven't seen anything from Squadron 42 for, I'd say, about a year and a half or so, and even then it's just been more behind the scenes action. They originally were supposed to show something, I think, at CitizenCon last year. They didn't. Then it was supposed to be this year, CitizenCon, which is around October. They didn't. And they said, oh, we're actually going to do that in our Christmas holiday stream. So that's going to be coming up, but also supposedly I think they're showing some content to IGN next week. So hopefully we'll finally get a bit of a state of where Squadron 42 is going to be at. Supposedly Mark Hamill will feature in this content, which is, I guess good timing from a marketing point of view with Star Wars being out right now, and Mark Hamill being quite a focus in the new Last Jedi movie. But yeah, will we actually see any gameplay? Will we actually see a functional game that has, I mean, this is the game that they should have been focusing on. Forget the MMO, just get this done. Because for a lot of the original backers, they just wanted a Wing Commander game. And that's what Squadron 42 is supposed to be. So anyway, we'll report back next week and see if it is still all smoke and mirrors, or if we actually have some plausible information and content to look at. And maybe, hopefully, a release date, because we've missed multiple release dates times for Squadron 42, and some of that was supposed to be like just an episode of the... I mean, originally it was supposed to be the whole game, and then it was like, oh, we're going to release an episode of 10 missions, and now it's like a year or two later after that, and it's like, we're not even showing you any content, let alone letting you play the first 10 missions. So, yeah, I highly doubt we'll get a release date, but we'll have to see. And now finally, after that rant as usual, I really shouldn't put Star Citizen into my news. Take-Two has announced a new publishing arm for independent developers, and it's called Private Division. The games to be released on it will include Kerbal Space Program, Ancestors: A Humankind Odyssey, and RPG codenamed currently Project White, which is being developed by ex-DICE devs, plus 2 unannounced games. One's by Obsidian, which is supposed to be like the biggest game they've ever made, supposedly features some ex-original Fallout devs as well. and V1, which I don't know that company myself, but supposedly is headed by the co-creator of Halo. So that sounds quite interesting. It's interesting. Where do you draw the line with being called independent when you have a major publisher behind you like that? I mean, in some ways, I feel like being independent maybe is not having a major publisher behind you, but as long as these independent developers are truly independent in that they're not being told by Take-Two what to do and to slap microtransactions onto every level and things like that, then I guess it is still independent development. It just happens to be published through one of the biggest game publishers in the world. But hopefully that will be good news for those games in reaching a bigger audience. And I must admit, I'm quite intrigued about a new Obsidian game, especially if it includes Fallout developers. That could be quite interesting. Anyway, that's it for this week's ZedKraze show. Wrapping up the week in game news. What's coming up on the ZedKraze live stream on twitch.tv/ZedKraze? Well, let me tell you. This Sunday night from 7 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time, we continue our top 10 games of the year list, counting down number 8 and number 7. We'll continue that on Wednesday next week, which will be obviously 6 and 5, and then we'll do 4 and 3 the following Sunday. And of course, the ZedKraze show will be back next Friday, 7 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time as well. That's it for tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, check ya.